And people figured out that by using different human languages, that they could actually get the information out of DeepSeek that it was programmed with its guardrails not to release. If someone was able to get access to that, could they get the sensitive information that Cisco's placed in that model out? It's a lot more difficult than just saying, look for a pattern that looks like a social security number and don't let it out.
AI is going to be used more and more for this stuff, like analyzing traffic. Is that where we're going?
We've got AI generating things like polymorphic threats. I need my security to be able to be updated constantly to keep up, right? Security is no longer a place in the network we send traffic. Security has to be part of the fabric of the network itself. AI is definitely here, and it's the way that we're going to do security going forward. We're here building our own AI defense force to defend against those bad actors.
Everyone, it's David Bumble back with Craig from Cisco here at Cisco Live. Craig, we last saw each other at a very cool place and you're wearing a jacket.
Yes, we were at McLaren at the HyperShield launch.
So I believe there's been an update since then. There's a product that you are announcing called the Hybrid Mesh Firewall. Is that correct?
So Hybrid Mesh Firewall is really an industry space more than a product that we're announcing. So this is Cisco's take on the Hybrid Mesh Firewall.
Perhaps it's a dumb question, but HyperShield, this new firewall, is it the same thing? Is it like an iteration? Is it like a range of products?
So it's a range of products, right? Hybrid Mesh Firewall, I think there's an industry definition of what it means, which is taking a bunch of different types of firewalls and managing them together with a common management plane. But we think it's more than that. So let's take a step back and think about the journey of firewalling that we've been on, right? We started with a firewall as a box.
Yep. I mean, we two old guys, right? I remember the Pixes of the day.
I think I started my career administering Pixes.
Yep.
So we started with simple firewalls, simple ACLs maybe, in a box. We went to stateful firewalls.
Yep.
We went to hardware accelerated firewalls. Then we went the other direction. We virtualized those firewalls. Then we took those virtual firewalls, put them in the cloud, made them multi-tenant, called it Firewall as a Service.
Yep.
All of those things were still doing the same thing though, right? They were all still just performing the same firewalling functions. And so firewalling, that word, becomes very interesting. Because if you think about firewalling instead of firewall, now you can start thinking about all the different applications of firewalling that you might do anywhere in the network. And so HyperShield is an example of that, right? HyperShield is taking the concept of firewalling and bringing it closer to applications using technologies like eBPF we talked about last time, being able to bring application security and network security closer together. That's an example of firewalling right at the application boundary. So this concept of hybrid mesh firewalling is, okay, I need to do not just firewalls, I need to do firewalling, and that includes the firewall boxes, which still exist and are still going to exist for a long period of time.
I'm glad you said that, yeah.
That includes cloud-native firewalls running in the public cloud. That includes application security solutions like HyperShield. That includes my microsegmentation. That even includes things like AI defense, where I need to block against modern threats that are coming in AI. So I need all of those different types of firewalling managed through a single management plane and being able to look and normalize my policies across all those different enforcement points. That's what hybrid mesh firewall is about.
So is there a product being launched now, or is it like the start of a range of products, or what's happening at the moment and where are we going?
So Cisco's lucky because we already had products in all these spaces. So for us, this is more of a convergence story than a new product introduction story. We announced last year at Cisco Live, Security Cloud Control. And Security Cloud Control was all about bringing these different management planes together. So bring traditional firewalling, bring our multi-cloud defense, bring our HyperShield, bringing now AI defense and secure access, our SSE solution, under a single pane of glass. Now you have all of the different ways you're going to do firewalling for the different types of workloads. You have your single management plane. That's how we're delivering on the hybrid mesh firewall story. So for us, like I said, it's a convergence story, coupling the innovation we have, where we're closing gaps in traditional firewalling, things that it couldn't solve before with products like HyperShield and AI Defense. And we're bundling that with the classic definition of hybrid mesh firewall, the traditional firewall, the cloud native firewall, and bringing that to market under the umbrella of Security Cloud Control.
So for someone who's done, in traditional sense, understands firewalling, like permit or deny on an edge device, that's only one example and that'll still continue, right?
That'll still continue, but permit or deny, a simple, like signature-based permit or deny, that's not good enough to capture all the threats anymore. We've got all these things that are changing. I mean, AI, it's almost cliche at this point to talk about AI, right? But we've got malware that is polymorphic. generated by AI. So a simple IPS signature is no longer good enough to catch it because it's constantly adapting, just like a virus in the real world, to bypass those protections. We've got attacks that are happening inside of models, in data leakage that's happening out of AI. I think something really interesting that I was reading about in the wake of DeepSeek and everything that happened in the vein of DeepSeek, but something that's really interesting. You know, we talk about models, AI models, we talk about guardrails. There are things that you ask DeepSeek that it won't give you an answer to. What happened in Tiananmen Square, right? You can't get an answer to that question if you ask DeepSeek. And what that did was start this worldwide phenomenon of people trying to essentially trick DeepSeek into giving them an answer about what happened in a certain event that it was programmed not to give the answer to. And people figured out that by using different human languages, by writing code that tricked the model into answering things because thought it was answering coding questions and not answering a simple prompt-based question and answer, that they could actually get the information out of DeepSeek that it was programmed with its guardrails not to release. And I think that's a really great corollary for DLP and AI models, where we need things like AI defense because we can't rely on the model to be protecting the data that's within it. We certainly can't trust people not to disclose things to a model, right? We don't have that level of protection anymore. And so if you assume that everything that ever goes into a model, regardless of how you program it, there's a way to get it out, we need these sophisticated tools that are sitting in front that are going to do that advanced DLP, that advanced processing, and protect that sensitive data for us. Hybrid mesh firewall is not just about putting a single pane of glass on the different types of firewalling that we have today. It's also about integrating these more advanced security techniques that solve the gaps that existed in traditional firewalling.
I like to ask dumb questions because I'm quite slow. Now, you mentioned DLP AI, is that right? Which is?
It is exactly what it sounds like, right? We think of DLP, we think of in my CASB solution, in my SSE solution, how do I prevent some sensitive data like credit card numbers or social security numbers from getting out of this database store? And so we look for simple patterns and signatures. We know what a phone number looks like. We know what a social security number looks like. It's a lot more complicated when we start talking about LLMs and the type of data that we have in LLMs. Cisco, we have our own AI implementation that's internal only. If someone was able to get access to that, could they get the sensitive information that Cisco's placed in that model out? It's a lot more difficult than just saying, look for a pattern that looks like a social security number and don't let it out. How do you know exactly what's good and what's bad to be exfiltrated? And again, how do you prevent against these sophisticated people that are doing prompt engineering and trying to bypass the guardrails that you put in place? So I think more and more, we're going to be looking to these advanced types of controls. HyperShield is the application side of that, right? With Kubernetes-based applitions, with multi-cloud applications are ephemeral, applications are spread all over. We can't rely on IP addresses, we can't rely on ports, we can't rely on host names. Now I need more advanced controls sitting closer to the network. So again, taking the firewall, there's a word I love, denominalization.
Okay, you got to explain what that means.
Denominalization is taking a noun and making it a verb.
Okay.
So take the firewall, don't think about a firewall, think about firewalling. So change the mindset from security is a place in the network that I send traffic to security is part of the network. Everywhere that there is data, that's what hybrid mesh firewall is about. If security is part of the network, if firewalling is everywhere, if firewalling is now not just boxes, but it's my cloud, it's my boxes, it's my HyperShield agents, it's my AI defense models, and I need to manage that all from one central place and be able to make sure that I have consistency in a security posture across all of those places. That's really what we're trying to solve with hybrid mesh firewall.
I mean, it sounds like the old days, it was much simpler, right? It's so complicated now. In the old days, you just put a firewall at the edge. But now you're like talking about firewalling everywhere.
Yeah, well, there really isn't an edge anymore, right? We used to have a server that hosted an application. You could put a box in front of it. And then we moved to a rack of servers, and you could put a box in the top of the rack. And then we had a whole data center, and then you put a perimeter firewall perimeter. But now we have applications that are spread everywhere. We have IoT devices spread everywhere. We have users spread everywhere. We have SaaS applications. Now every SaaS application, if it doesn't already have an AI agent, probably will soon have an AI agent. And so now there is no perimeter.
Yep.
So I'm on my phone, sitting here in the Rye, talking to a service, striped across multiple clouds, running agents,
Yep.
talking to a database sitting somewhere else. Where's the firewall? Where's the box go?
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Doesn't work anymore.
So just to clarify, because again, I'm slow, you still have the edge firewalls, and then you mentioned a whole bunch of other products. Can you just like give us a big picture of like what is doing what? Because now you're managing all these different pieces, right? But like, what are those pieces, and then what actually manages all of that?
So you've still got a perimeter firewall,
Yep.
right? You've still got to control things that are going in and out of your branches and campuses and data centers. You've still got to interconnect those with SD-WAN.
Yep.
That still exists as one domain. So you've got perimeter firewalls.
Yep.
They still exist. You've got another set of firewalls that sit inside your data centers, inside your public cloud. They're doing east-west security. They're doing microsegmentation. They're looking for threats, blocking lateral movement. That's a second class of firewalling that's happening sometimes with firewall appliances, sometimes with software applications, right? So now I've got the perimeter secured. I've got inside the data center secured. Now I've got users that don't sit behind those firewalls. They're the mobile users. So now I need to bring SSE in, because I've got to bring in zero trust network access to bring in the users who aren't sitting in the data center to access applications sitting in the data center. I've also got applications that sit in the cloud. They don't sit in the data center. So the other piece of SSE, which is secure web gateway, firewall as a service,
Yep.
right? Those are protecting the applications that are not running in my data center. They're running in the public cloud. And then I've got things like multi-cloud defense or other cloud native firewalling solutions inside my public cloud that are sitting at VPC boundaries, that are doing things like negotiating between a serverless ephemeral application that doesn't have any concept of IP addresses, talking to a database sitting in my traditional data center that has an IP address and operates on IPs and ports. So I've secured the perimeter of the data center. I've done microsegmentation inside the data center. I've done cloud native firewalling at the VPC boundary. I've brought users in using ZTNA, either through a firewall or through a cloud on-ramp. And then I've used Firewall as a service and CASB and DLP and other technologies to secure access to SaaS applications. All of those things are now managed through Cisco's security cloud control. That's hybrid mesh firewall. And you layer AI defense on top of that as an example of taking AI security and making a very specific application of advanced security using all of those observation points that we've built in this fabric I just talked about.
Now, when we spoke about HyperShield, the whole idea, and just correct me, you have like these mini firewalls all over the show, right? I don't think at that time there was an example of that. We're talking about servers, but there wasn't anything on switches or firewalls. Is that available yet or coming?
Yes, so big news at the show this week, right? We talked at the launch about HyperShield being a combination of two things. Agents, those eBPF agents that run where your application servers are running. That's what gives us the ability to give identity to workloads and processes. That's what gives us the ability to do threat detection and response on things like function calls and system calls and all of the things that are happening on the application server. But eBPF doesn't work everywhere.
Yep.
Right? Even if everyone upgraded their OSs to modern OSs that supported eBPF, which would be great for me, we still have IoT devices and OT devices and all of these other things where I'm not going to have an eBPF agent running. And so we still do, back to the concept of firewalls, we still need some of that traditional type of firewalling. But it's really cumbersome to deploy that as big giant boxes running in the data center.
Yep.
It's power hungry, it's expensive. So what we announced here this week is Cisco Smart Switches,
Okay.
where we've taken the Cisco switches, the traditional switches that we used to run in the data center, and we've added advanced compute with DPUs. So by integrating DPUs into those smart switches, we're actually running HyperShield enforcement inside the DPUs. That allows us to do 800 gigs of traditional L7 firewalling in a DPU form factor inside the switch, and that is actively talking to and working with those eBPF agents that are running out in the network. So eBPF agent says, I've already inspected this traffic, it's good. The switch can bypass the DPU entirely. eBPF agent is not running because it's an IoT device, or the eBPF agent says, hey, something's wrong here, do some more inspection. Now we've got this high performance firewall running inside the switch that can actually do that inspection and do that security for you. So it's bringing this notion of a border control to every rack in your data center by putting it right in the top of rack switch.
Is that a separate module? Is it a whole new switch, or what is it physically?
It's a whole new switch because we're talking about actually adding hardware assist modules into the switches, right? We've got to be able to do this at a speed that is realistic for modern data centers. And so that required adding specialized hardware. That requires a new generation of switches. But HyperShield's just the first thing that we're doing with these smart switches. We didn't call them HyperShield switches. We called them smart switches. And so the idea is the future is bright for taking this hardware, this advanced silicon that we've put in these switches now, and just like HyperShield, building more and more security functionality that can run inside the switch. And the great thing is we have two different paradigms coming together, network and security. Right? And one of the challenges of networking and security coming together is that the rate of change is different.
Yep.
The appetite for risk is different.
Yep.
Right? How often has BGP changed?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? It doesn't
exactly.
change very much.
No.
I want my network to be rock solid. I don't want to update it very often. I don't want to make dramatic changes. It's infrastructure at this point.
Yep.
And it should just work.
Yep.
Security, more than ever,
Yep.
is not
Yep.
infrastructure.
Yep.
So if a vendor says, I'm putting security in an ASIC, and that's how I'm going to deliver security, well, we're in a place where the world of security is changing faster than it ever has before.
Yeah.
Right? Now we're in this AI arms race with
Yes.
different model vendors. We've got
Accelerated madly. Yeah.
model vendors who are less concerned about their models being used to generate malicious or exploitative code. We've got AI generating things like polymorphic threats we talked about. I need my security to be able to be updated constantly to keep up, right? That was the idea we talked about with HyperShield. So now I've got a switch that's running that doesn't change very often. I've got a Silicon One network processor that's running, that knows how to do network forwarding, that knows how to do, at line rate, selective steering of traffic in and out of DPUs based on the signals I got from the network. And within those DPUs, I have these secure enclaves of compute where I can rapidly iterate these security functions so that without upgrading the switch, without incurring network downtime, without risking that infrastructure that my network is running on, I can keep up with those emerging threats that are happening. So smart switch, yes, hybrid mesh firewall, HyperShield, that's a great application of the smart switch. I think what you'll see from Cisco over the next few years is a lot more innovations built into this hardware, because really it gives us this perfect place in the network to observe everything that's happening and to protect you, because everything eventually is going through that switch before it enters or leaves the network, right?
Craig, I've got some other topics here. Eve sounded really exciting. So just for people who haven't or heard about it, what is Eve, and is that also going to go into these new switches?
Yeah, so one of the challenges that we're solving with hybrid mesh firewall, and HyperShield's an example of this, is the ability to see inside encrypted traffic.
Yep.
Man in the middle used to be the way we do security.
Yep.
That's getting harder and harder and harder.
Yep.
TLS 1.3, encrypted SNI, forget post-quantum, which is coming in the future, right? It's going to be harder and harder for us to crack open a packet and look inside. And so Eve was an example of thinking about what can we do from a security perspective if I can't look inside the packet.
Yep.
So I can't do man in the middle, but what can I do? Well, I can see the TLS handshake. And so Eve is doing deep analysis of the TLS handshake itself to give us an assessment of whether the exchange looks like it's trusted or untrusted. So at least we know that nothing malicious is happening at the transport layer before we allow that connection to proceed. And that's the kind of thing that we want to integrate in various observation points in the network as part of our hybrid mesh firewall to extend visibility. So again, if I can't use eBPF, if I can't deploy eBPF, if I can't deploy HyperShield, then I still need a way of getting some visibility into that encrypted traffic so that I can make more intelligent decisions about what to do. And that's what Eve allows us to do.
That's not on the switches at the moment. That's on the firewalls, right?
Correct. That's in the secure firewall.
But that, because of the DPUs and the switches, that gives you guys the possibility to add stuff in the future. So that maybe could be something along the line.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the switches today, we start with a focus on L4 firewalling.
Yep.
East-west microsegmentation, vast majority of use cases are happening at L4. But we do want to move into L7 in those switches, in that firewalling function in those switches eventually. Cisco's done something really great And we've taken all of our advanced threat protection libraries and we've built it into something we call Secure Threat Services, STS. And Cisco STS is essentially a library of all of Cisco's advanced threat protection. So that means whether you get Cisco Secure Firewall, Cisco Catalyst, Cisco Meraki MX, you're getting the same set of advanced threat protection tools that includes things like Snort, that includes things like Encrypted Visibility Engine. And when we bring L7 firewalling into the switches in the future, it will be by leveraging STS. And at that point, you'll have that same functionality in the switches as well. So not available today, but it is coming in the future.
That's great. AI is obviously the rage, all in the news at the moment. Old school was like static, like you said in the beginning, static rules, permitting or denying. AI is going to be used more and more for this stuff, like analyzing traffic. Is that where we're going?
Yeah, I mean, AI has to be where we're going,
Yep.
right? And I think there's a couple of interesting things that are happening there because AI is predominantly deployed on Kubernetes. If I look at inferencing workloads and other things. So two things that are driving challenges in firewalling. One is AI
Yep.
and the emergence of AI threats. The other is Kubernetes itself and Kubernetes being very ephemeral and
Yep.
very different.
Yep.
At Cisco, we've done two things. We acquired Isovalent.
Yep.
So we now own Cilium, which is the world's largest CNI. So we've got this observation point inside Kubernetes. And then we layer on things like AI defense and HyperShields, where we're either securing the use of AI with AI defense or using AI to inform tools like Cilium how to apply security policies in real time. We're really getting, David, to this bot versus bot world.
Seems like it.
Because if attackers are moving faster and faster and faster using generative AI,
Yep.
we don't really have a choice. We have to use AI as defenders or we'll never be able to keep it.
And it seems like there's another trend where networking and security are now becoming like network security rather than networking and security. Is that where we're going?
I think so. I mean, I said it before. This is my tagline at this point. Security is no longer a place in the network we send traffic.
Yep.
Security has to be part of the fabric of the network itself. We have to be able to inspect at every place. We have to be able to apply controls at every place. And we have to be able to gather all of that data and make those decisions using all those observation and enforcement points. And again, that becomes a scale of data problem, which
Yep.
is the thing that AI helps us solve.
So for anyone who's like wondering if they should learn AI, it's like, yeah, in cyber especially, right?
Well, in anything in software,
Yeah.
but in cybersecurity in particular, AI is definitely here, and it's the way that we're going to do security going forward.
So AI versus AI.
Absolutely.
Craig, any final thoughts?
Huh?
Any like visionary stuff you can share perhaps, or like encouragement for people? Because you look at this and you think, as a defender, it's complicated, man. It's like, are we going to win?
Well, the good news is hybrid mesh firewall and things like Cisco Security Cloud Control, they're about simplifying it. They're about making it easier on defenders to keep up and to do their job, right? So there's still an army of good guys,
Yep.
right? That's something I want people to take away.
Yep.
There's still an army of good guys. Hopefully people think Cisco is one of the good guys.
Yep.
We're here building our own AI defense force to defend against those bad actors, make it easier and easier for you to prevent those emerging threats, and free up the engineers' time to be able to learn and stay one step ahead of what's coming next, just given the rapid rate of change that we're undergoing in the industry.
Craig, thanks so much, man. Really
Yeah.
appreciate you sharing.
Great. Thanks for having me. Great to be here.